Hola a todos, bienvenidos. My name is David Ortiz. Mi nombre es David Ortiz. I am the inaugural faculty fellow for the Center for Latin American and Border Studies. Welcome to our first speaker talk of the Spring 2025 speaker series for the Center for Latin American and Border Studies. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have a fantastic couple of speakers today. I want to thank you for being here and in attendance. And before we start our webinar, I want you to tell you a couple of things. We will start by introducing our two speakers today, and at any point that you are inclined, please use the Q&A button in your Zoom. If you're using Windows, it's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It says Q&A. If you're using a Mac, I think it's at the top of your screen. So please use that Q&A button to pose your question, and we will take those questions at the end of Dr. Coronado's and Dr. Magaña's presentation. We'll start fielding those questions and answering them live. So thank you so much for doing that. In our chat, we're going to post our social media. Please follow us on social media if you're interested in our next two Spring 2025 speaker series talks. So we'll post all of our social media there. We post constantly about our upcoming speakers. We posted about this event, so please do follow us there. Okay, without further ado, I want to start our presentation for the day today. So, bienvenidas again, Dr. Magaña and Dr. Coronado. It is my incredible pleasure and honor to have you both present in our Center for Latin American and Border Studies speaker series. I will do a brief introduction right now of your very long, a short introduction of your very long curriculums that you have. And then after that, I'll let you take over and be the speakers and for the presentation. So without further ado, Dr. Lisa Magaña is professor in the School of Transborder Studies and Associate Dean of Strategic Chartered Initiatives in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Arizona State University. She has published in the area of immigration and Latino public policy issues quite vastly. She is the author of Straddling the Border, one of the seminal books on this topic, and the Politics of Diversity in Arizona, Immigration and Latinos in Politics. She's also co-editor of the book Latino Politics and Arizona's Immigration Law, SB 1070, and co-author of Empoderados, Empowered, How Latinos Transform Politics in Arizona, and Immigration and Latinos and Politics, as well as numerous chapters and book articles on immigration and Latino politics. So welcome, Dr. Magaña. It's a pleasure for us to have you here today. Also with us is Dr. Iracema Coronado, who is the director and professor of the School of Transborder Studies at Arizona State University. And she also has an incredibly vast and productive scholarship on Latinos and Latinas and politics. She's co-authored of the book titled Fronteras No Más, Toward Justice at the U.S.-Mexico Border, and co-editor of numerous books, including Children Crossing Borders, Latin American Migrant Childhoods, Dígame, Policy and Politics on the Texas Border, and Juntos Pero No Revueltos, Estudios sobre la Frontera Texas-Chihuahua. She also co-authored Latinas in Local Government Políticas, Latina Public Officials in Texas. She has been the past president of the Association for the Borderland Studies and is the co-chair of the Environmental Protection Agency Good Neighborhood Environmental Board. She served as the executive director of the Commission of Environmental Corporations of North America from 2012 to 2016. And she was named as one of the top 100 influential Hispanics in the United States in 2010 by Hispanic Business Magazine. Again, Dr. Coronado, it is an honor for us to have you here and for you to be presenting at the CLAPS webinar. Today, both Dr. Magaña and Dr. Coronado will be presenting on their new book, so we are honored to have a presentation, and hopefully we can get all of you to be interested in this book and buy it, called Trailblazers in Leadership, Examining Political Strategies and Success of Latinas in Arizona. And I will now leave Dr. Coronado and Dr. Magaña to take over. Again, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm going to go over the PowerPoints. Iracema will chime in when you want to add something. And our dear Dominic will be helping us in the background because personally I'm inept when it comes to Zoom and with extra material. So thank you, Dominic. Okay, so Iracema and I have been working on this book, and we have a tentative title, which is Transborder Trailblazers. And it's important that we make the distinction that we are looking at leaders. And so when we think about women, and we think about Latinas, and we think about extraordinary ways of leading, we decided to include the notion of leadership, and not necessarily, I should say we started off as elected officials, but we found that the way to define and think about leadership is much more inclusive, and there's some extraordinary women. Okay, so next slide, Dominic. Okay, there we go. Is that the first slide, Dominic? Yep, here we go. Okay, so the focus on this project is, as I mentioned, we're looking at leaders, not necessarily elected officials. We define leaders as those that influence change, inspire excellence, and bring meaning and attention to relevant issues. So thinking about that can be community, that can be institutional, that can be political, that can be immigration, that could be a chef that does remarkable stuff in the community who's also a leader. So thinking about, again, that idea of excellence and inspiration. In this book, we think about innovative ways about thinking about leadership, different strategies, different recommendations that maybe we don't think about when we think about leadership. And of course, bringing in unique perspectives, which is always the case when we need to do more research on Latinas and Latina leaders. In this book, we have, I'm pretty happy about the literature review. I think we have new and innovative ways about thinking about leadership, as well as defining the unique sort of aspects of what leadership means. Next, please. Okay, so we, at a very, very beginning, we decided to use testimonios, or in-depth open interviews. As you can imagine, this is new research, so quantitative or databases they're not a lot. And so in some ways, we're creating brand new areas of research and data and stories that I hope will set the stage for other areas of research to build on in this particular area. In this book, this forthcoming book, we look at the role of education in leadership. So, for example, some women would say that ethnic studies or Chicano studies played a very big role in terms of getting women excited about being leaders. Others, it might be the experience or the education of hands-on learning from others. So we think about education from a variety of different disciplinary and situational sort of perspectives. We really wanted to highlight the personal accomplishments. So something that we may not think about in terms of how we would define a leader. So for example, somebody was able to get a new project in their community, or somebody talking about creating an infrastructure around the economy that would benefit low income or immigrant women. So a variety of different ways of thinking about accomplishments. What we found consistently when we did, I should say, numerous interviews, was consistently the role of and the support of family And we think that's really important, and that's consistent with women and certainly women of color. So the role of family is really, really important in this research. Ida Sema and I consistently found, and she's going to talk about a previous book that she did, but one thing that we found that's consistent, and you're going to see this theme throughout, is that women talked about that they had to get involved, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. They had to become involved because it was personal. So you see a lot of women getting involved around issues of their community or their children's education or safety concerns or the environment, making it a safe space for those in their community. And we also look at what Ida Sema likes to call the chispa or the spark. What was that pivotal moment that got these extraordinary leaders excited? And then what I really like is we come up with some recommendations and future implications. And we're both political scientists, and I think we provide something that is new and innovative thinking about this particular project. Next, Dominic, please. So Ida Sema, you want to talk about the book that started this particular project? Her pivotal, very important book on this topic.
Thank you, dear Lisa. Lisa and I are good friends in addition to being good colleagues. And so thank you, Lisa, for leading us off. And I want to thank Professor Ortiz, Marta, and Dominic for providing the infrastructure to support our presentation today. I'm very familiar with New Mexico State University. I have various friends there. I lived in El Paso, Texas. I was at UTEP for 20 years. And so I did a lot of work with colleagues at New Mexico State, Cynthia Bejarano, Chris Brown, and others, Neil Harvey. It's been a wonderful kind of coming together when I was at UTEP with New Mexico State people. So I'm very happy to be able to share this with you. So back in 2008, we decided to write a book on Latina public officials in Texas. And the five of us who wrote this book were, at the time, the five political scientists in the state of Texas who were Latinas. We were the five political scientists throughout the state, which was pretty unique. And at the time, Texas did not have a first governor, a first Latina member of the House of Representatives. Now they do. So it was really kind of looking at Latina first. So we looked at the first state senators, the first state legislators, the first members of the House of Representatives, the first mayor of Dallas, the first mayor of Brownsville, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really a Latina first. But one of the things that we noted in the women that we interviewed is that many of them I'm just doing this because I want to help my community. I want to do this because I want to provide a service. I want to improve things. Many of the women that we interviewed that went on to have more successful political careers really got started in school board politics. They got invited, they got part of the PTA, and then they became more involved in the community. And that was kind of like their stepping stone into further political office. And we felt that many of them were not as aware of their accomplishments. I remember interviewing Alicia Chacon, who started on the school board, who then served on the city council and became the county judge in El Paso County. And after she told me her story, she's like, now that I tell you my story, I realize I have accomplished a lot and I've done a lot. And one of the things that Alicia noted was how different it was when she first started in politics to raise money. She said, we used to actually have bake sales and sell tamales to raise money, to make posters, to go then put out in people's houses. And nowadays, campaign finance is a whole other complicated endeavor. And so she said, it's interesting how easy it was in the earlier days than it was now in the future. So that's how this all got started. And Lisa and I later learned that Lisa was one of the reviewers for this book when it was being considered for publication by UT Press. So that's how that got started.
Okay, so
Okay.
next, Dominic.
Next, Dominic.
Okay, so as we mentioned, we have some, but we just started doing the research and found that there were so many more extraordinary women in addition to Latina elected and appointed officials. Here in Arizona, and I'm sure in New Mexico, what we found are women that are immigrant, that are not only first generation, cannot vote, but are doing things that are so much more politicized and engaged and being political than you would probably think about when we think about leadership. So we were able to interview some truly extraordinary immigrant activists that have national, no exaggeration, international recognition for what they're doing and how they're mobilizing their community. But again, may not necessarily see themselves as leaders or political. And so it's extraordinary. And so we have a couple that we've interviewed. There's one that started off as we can get into the details, but there's one particular person that started off as a high school student that didn't know she was undocumented until she graduated, couldn't go to university here at ASU or universities because there was at the time, you had to pay out-of-state tuition if you were an unauthorized student, even though you had gone to school here your whole life. She ended up cleaning houses for a year. She was an excellent high school student, needless to say, but she became politicized in community college working at this thing called Team Awesome. And they would actually work with folks canvassing, and she would say, I cannot vote. Can you please support elected officials that believe in comprehensive immigration reform? She has become an incredible activist here in Arizona, despite the fact that she cannot vote. She's this person, her name is Allie, and you'll see her I've seen her on national television. She's extraordinary. And she's just one of the women that we highlight in this research. So again, not just elected officials or appointed, but these sort of women that we may not necessarily think of when we think about women in leadership roles. And that was really, really important to us. Okay, next, please. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, we talked about women. It became very personal. And so that's not surprising, and just a little political science rule that many women that are currently congresswomen or US senators consistently will talk about starting their political careers at the local level and it being personal. So not surprisingly, a lot of elected officials started off in student or teaching school boards or the Parent Teachers Association. A lot of surveys show that this is where they got started. And again, it was very personal. Again, had to get involved. It wasn't just a choice. It was like a calling. That what Iracema says, that chispa, or what was that actually motivated them. They believe that the leader should have qualities that one aspires to have. Kind of interesting in this climate. Women are exceptional leaders. They don't choose to be leaders unless they feel that they have qualities that are worthy of being a leader. And that's really important right now in this sort of climate, that women don't just choose over prestige, but in fact feel like, okay, I need to do this because I'm worthy of this particular, worthy of getting involved. And we can talk about that a little bit more. Again, we talked about the importance of family. And if I may, in a lot of the surveys, talking about that particular appreciation and gratitude that they are the first, that they're able to go back because of their family and contribute or make a change because of the extraordinary experiences that they came from. Obviously, a lot of first generation. We have stories of one particular state Senate member whose mom worked in the post office at the Arizona Capitol. And that was just this influence and the pride of now being able to actually be working in the Capitol. So a lot of meaningful experience that comes from family and comes from support. Also, I would say relatedly, in some of the interviews, a lot of families don't understand quite what you're doing. And obviously, being a mom and having children, and how do these sort of issues come into play in family support systems. So a lot of really, I would say, beautiful, nuanced research in terms of the impact of family on these leaders. And okay, we'll go on. And then this was interesting too. So mentors. And I want to say that a lot of, and I'm going to say a lot of, many, I say most, what came up significantly is, and tell me if I'm wrong, Idisema, many of the respondents said, I didn't think of myself in this role until I was encouraged, or until somebody said, you should be taking this role on, or you are a leader, or I'm going to mentor you because you have these qualities. And that's consistent with the research on women not seeing themselves particularly as leaders, particularly as elected officials, but this idea that mentorship it can be informal, but it also is really important, that notion of encouragement. And I would say relatedly that many of these women, because of that encouragement and mentorship, have stated, I want to be that kind of mentor to the next generation of up and coming Latina leaders. Next, please, Dominic. Okay, I already said that. The first one. Essential folk, okay, we said that. Yeah, this was a big deal. Particularly for, I would say all, but especially for elected officials that, and I'm going to make a broad generalization here, so forgive me, but for elected officials, a couple things. We see that men will get involved in elected politics because it's prestigious and they have the decision to decide whether or not to participate. Again, this is a broad generalization. Men also have not more money, but necessarily maybe better jobs to be able to participate in elected positions. Here in Arizona, the pay to be in the state House of Representatives or the state Senate is very, very little money. And so
24,000, but in
24
New Mexico, it's less. It's a volunteer legislature.
Yeah, so you can imagine if you are, mom working and maybe, it's going to be a big, very big commitment. So again, going back to that, the issue of money and resources of your time absolutely is essential. So this would absolutely be a recommendation if we want to encourage more first-time leaders. That should absolutely be taken into consideration, the issue of resources. And the respondents also talked about, and this is consistent with the literature on policy making and elected officials generally with women. So women bring, first of all, women are better at dealing with issues, controversial, being able to settle controversies, being able to, being better able at with problems. Okay, better. Just I'm gonna say they're better, and that they bring to the decision making their unique. They bring the fact that they are women, and what are those unique, or what are those experiences as women, and as women they bring issues that may affect women that may not be considered if we don't have women in these positions. And this is true for local, state, federal, and again, as I mentioned, in policy-making positions. So it's really important to have different types of people in these decision-making roles. And there's also the challenge of being the only woman, the only or the first. You can imagine there's a lot of challenges with these responsibilities. Would you want to add to that, Idisema?
No, we can go. We can
Okay.
continue. Mhm.
Next, Dominic. Okay, so yeah, a lot of so this is more for elected officials. But yeah, volunteering, I would add to that again at the local level for elected officials campaign, volunteering, inspire them to run for office. Respect for their colleagues and the bodies that they serve. Again, working with somebody that encouraged you or somebody that you aspire to be like. I will say, and I'm going to say 97% Itasema, when we went through these interviews, there wasn't one, if not us or the interviewee, that would break down and cry.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I mean, I like to make it no joke, a lot of gratitude, which is so beautiful. A lot of us too, gratitude, like we get to do this research, but these folks feel again, maybe that's why they're so extraordinary, but almost every interview, I can't think of one where somebody I rarely didn't cry or was
Yeah.
very emotional or felt very, I mean, we would get done with the interviews and be like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, there were some that were very heartfelt. So for example, the mayor of Tucson, Regina, and we'll see her picture in a little later, but Regina talked about the role of taking classes in Mexican American studies as creating a consciousness for her. And then she said that one of the most important things in her life was her parents were immigrants from Sonora. And she said, my parents, because they didn't speak English, because they were immigrants, were taken advantage of. They paid more money for rent. My father sometimes worked and didn't get paid what he should have been paid. She said, my parents suffered a lot of injustices. And when she talked about the hardship that the parents went through, she just broke down and had an incredibly heartfelt moment about, my parents have done so much and they suffered so many injustices, and they're not bitter and angry people. And so that was something that she noted. Another one that was also very touching was Rosana Gabaldon. She said that she volunteered on someone's campaign to learn the ropes. And once she learned how this worked, she said, oh no, I can do this. And she talked about one day she and her comadre were knocking on doors, asking people to vote for her for at the time the city council. And she said, the comadre was like, okay, we've done enough houses. Let's go home. It's late. And she said, let's go just do one more house. And they knock on the door, and it was a mom that had 3 kids, and the TV was on, and the stove was on. And the lady was like, what do you guys want? And, the lady was like, I don't, her expression was like, I don't have time to talk to you. And that the little girl who was with her mom said, Mommy, that's the lady who comes to school and reads to us. And she said that whole image changed. And the mom's like, oh, so you volunteer in my daughter's school. And then, it facilitated the conversation. I'm seeking your vote because I'm running for city council. And she said, that mom became one of her big supporters for her campaign. But it was that little girl who was like, Mommy, that's the lady that reads to us in school. So those are the kind of moments that were just so powerful. So anyway, let's continue.
Okay. Next, please, Dominic. Okay, so Itasema, let's take turns.
Okay.
Okay, because these
Okay.
are beautiful.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll
Okay,
go
so
first.
something happened there. I don't see the picture of
Yeah.
Isela.
All right, next one, please. All right, you want to
There.
go first or you
Okay.
want me to?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, what makes a good leader? Right now, what we're lacking, in my view, is people that are incredibly grounded in a basic value system that is centered around human kindness, integrity, and honesty and courage. Boy, that's the truth. How am I making decisions? Am I making a decision based on human empathy and understanding of human suffering and what's happening in society right now?
And she's a member of the House of Representatives, Isela Blanc.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey.
Next. Fowler is a member of the Navajo Nation, and we were also at the time interviewing minority women until we decided to narrow it just to Latinas. But she basically had a lot to share about having to do her homework. She said, you know, there are a lot of times people have this stereotype of minority women. And she said, you have to prove yourself every step of the way. And she always said, you know, you have to do your homework, you have to read, and you have to be out in the community. And she said, you really have to establish a working relationship. And she said there were barriers everywhere, including language barriers, is what Lena said.
Next. Okay, how would supporters of people that work for you describe your leadership? I enjoy the tough conversations and asking tough questions and to find real solutions. I'm not about putting band-aids on an issue. I'm about, okay, let's have these tough conversations and let's work really hard so that then what comes out of that is people coming together and having great resources and having a better place where people can actually live.
Okay, next. This is Victoria Steele. She's also identifies as Native American. And she said, people would tell me to stop focusing on women's issues. And my response was always, name me an issue that's not a women's issue. Name me an issue women and people in general would not benefit from if they had more people who look like me sitting at that table making the decisions. Who know that perspective? Who had that experience? That's State Senator Victoria Steele. Next.
Okay, sometimes I think this is the mayor of Tucson. Sometimes I think if I were to ever say something, anything remotely close to what this man is saying, I would be eaten alive. So really, the media treats us differently. Even our own party treats us differently. It's interesting because people underestimate my intelligence, but sometimes it's to their own detriment. So for me, it's like, you want to do this? Okay, go right ahead. But you're going to be shocked, and that's to your own detriment.
One of the things that Regina also commented during her interview was how she was always underestimated because she has an accent, her English is accented, and she felt that that was something that people always noted. Like, you know, how did you learn English? When did you learn English? Because of her accented English. But she's a very proud Sonorense for sure. Okay, next. Okay, so I'll talk about Petra. Petra is a community activist that used to fight the fight with Cesar Chavez. She has been around this community for years. And one of the things that is very interesting about Petra is she's very much rooted in her religion. She's very Catholic, and that really helps her. The social justice, the whole liberation theology inspired her a lot. And she basically, said that organizing is really hard and that you have to organize something or you have to create a movement. She said it's very time consuming and it takes a lot of patience and it takes people because it's about bringing people along with you. It's not just about running a program. There's a big difference between organizing and providing services. You can very quickly fall into the services trap, which we need services, right? But you need to also do the advocacy and do the organizing. So she was just an incredible leader in this community. And she's still out there to this day. She's one of the most active activists, if you will, in the state of Arizona. Yeah.
Okay, next, please. Okay, here we go. I just want to share with you a big reason why I decided to run. It was my father. My father's a very smart man. And when I said, hey, Dad, I'm going to be running for town council, he looked at me and he said, Mija, I'm going to give you a book. And he does. And he goes, it's Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements. This is how you need to serve. This is what's going to make you successful.
And she's the same one with the little girl that, she went to read in the classroom. Rosanna, and she's still in the legislature, in the state senate. Yeah. Next. So Charlene Fernandez is, she's now out of state politics. Her son now serves in her same district when she served. And she was really a top-notch Democratic Party leader here in Arizona. And one of the things that she said she was able to work on was water. We needed to get our tribal nations on board. And at that time, I was told that the Gila River Nation Council, we needed their buy-in. Every tribe in Arizona is important. So to me, that will stay with me forever, that moment. That moment when we got on the road and the phone rang and they said, we're with you. So she was able to bring about a huge policy decision that, Arizona is really critical with water issues. And to be able to bring the Gila River Nation along was something that was very important to her. She has done a lot for opening up space for other women. She has served as a mentor to many who have decided to run for office in the state. Next.
Okay, Sally Ann Gonzalez, Senate member. My mom started yelling from where she was, saying, "See, Judge, that was the way they treat the Yaquis in Guadalupe. They call us names, they laugh at us, they actually don't even want to go to church anymore, to mass anymore, because that's how they get treated." And I guess Miss Ruby Woods was sitting next to her and was pulling her coattail or something and saying, "Sit down, Maria, or you're gonna get contempt of court." And supposedly my mom said, "I don't care if I go to jail. I'm going to say what I need to say." So the influence of family on political activism. Do you want to add to that one, Ida Summer?
Sally is a member of the Yaqui Pascua community in Tucson, but she identifies, and she said, yes, I'm a member of the Pascua Yaqui tribe, but I'm also Hispanic and I'm also a Latina because many of my constituents are. She speaks Spanish very well, and she's very much an advocate for the community of South Tucson. Next. So this Liz Archuleta truly was motivated to run for office because of a class that she took on Chicano studies. She said that class transformed her life and that professor became her mentor. And she is the only Latina to serve as Board of Supervisors in Coconino County, which is in Flagstaff. And she really has done a great job. Flagstaff has, for example, problems where the school buses don't move because of muddy roads, because they're unpaved. And so there are a lot of challenges. It's a very rural community in many ways. And Liz has been instrumental in moving things forward. So she's been a great leader. She also has a son with special needs. And so that gives her another sort of lens and perspective on how she does her work. Next.
Okay, here we go. First, they testified talking about why they should not give Pascua Yaqui historical status. All these lawyers representing the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then when we testified and gave our testimony, I looked back to see they all left. I said, I think there needs to be a new policy because the only authority to create is the Almighty. It is God who can create, not the Bureau of Indian Affairs, not Congress. We should be historical. And there's something on the screen I can't see.
So we got our historical status.
Historical status.
Yeah. And she's still very active in Arizona politics, and she helps a lot in promoting women. She's a professor, or she's a retired professor of ethnic studies at Northern Arizona University. Okay, next.
I think this is the last one.
Yes. Yes, Laura Pastor is the daughter of a former member of the House for Arizona, Ed Pastor, who was one of the first Latinos elected to state office here in Arizona. And one of the things that she talked about as a major accomplishment was the cancer screening for firefighters. And she said, they really partnered with this Dr. Shukla from the Vincer Cancer Center, who helped to analyze the cases and was able to demonstrate that many of the firefighters were getting sick because of their work. And so she said, I would like to know that I saved some lives. And so that was one of her major contributions, was helping the firefighters and their cancer screenings. And she's still very active in Arizona politics. Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Okay, there's a few more. Yeah, next.
Okay. You know, my mom always brought us up that life is choices and consequences. We come up to T's in the road all the time, and it really depends on what direction you go and what decision you make, good or bad. I've always been entrepreneurial, and I'll probably mention small business 20 times in this interview because that's really what feeds me. And I still am president of the National Association of Women Business Owners here in Tucson. I'm still holding my commissioner role and having my own business that I do on the side. So that's really what has pushed me into my first role.
And she is the only Republican who granted us an interview. And she is the first Republican Latina to have a statewide office as Arizona Corporation Commissioner. Leah Marquez Peterson, and she's from Tucson. Okay, next. Okay, can you go back? There's one that's critical that, yeah, this before this one.
No,
No, there's a Reina. The next one?
I think she's after the next one.
Okay. Okay, so go to the, yeah, go to this one, you know, this one. Can you
I'll
go
do
back
this.
one?
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
this
I'll
one.
do
Yeah.
this. I went to the
Yeah.
council meeting and left the council meeting knowing that I was going to run. On the dais, there was no one that looks like me, first of all. It's scary, and they're deciding these types of decisions, and there's no one that represents who I feel I am in my community. And that night, I told my husband, and he was just like, okay, I'm here to support you. And so I put my two kids in a stroller, and we went door to door. And I didn't know it then, but that is the grassroots of organizing and campaigning. And it kind of came natural to me as far as, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Yeah, she's one of the first, right? I mean, she's the first, right? State,
Mhm. Yeah.
Arizona corporate commissioner. She also told a story about, if I'm not mistaken, she had cancer and she was very sick. And her mom, at one point, she was in the hospital, very, 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 very sick. And she's like, Mom, why me? And then years later, she was able to introduce some legislation in the state legislature regarding some reform and helping those with cancer. And she was, I remember this one particular story. She was on CNN, Anderson Cooper, and she calls her mom and she's like, Mom, I'm going to be on Anderson Cooper tonight. And the mom is, guess Anderson Cooper, who's that? And she's like, Mom, he's a big deal. And then the mom reminds her, that's why you got cancer, because this is this moment where you're having an impact. So this is beautiful. I will say I cried during that interview.
Yeah, it was
It's
very touching.
incredibly emotional. It was a beautiful interview. But anyway, she's pretty extraordinary, this particular person here. Okay, next.
Okay, so Reina Montoya is an incredible person, and I'll tell you why. First of all, she was undocumented. She later was a DACA recipient, and she has been a force in Arizona politics. And so the beauty of Reina's work is how can a person who's not able to vote bring about such incredible change in the state? And one of the things that she did was help pass Proposition 308, which gives in-state tuition to undocumented and DACA recipients at state universities in Arizona. And it's, we have a proposition process in the state of Arizona, and Reina, with her organization, Aliento, which is a support network for undocumented, mixed status, and DACA recipients, has been able to move that envelope that went to the voters voted, and that is why now undocumented and DACA recipients are able to pay in-state tuition like others here in the state. And it was something that really has been revolutionary here in Arizona, to have that kind of political clout and not being able to vote. And so that's why she's a real rock star. And she's one of our graduates, by the way. She's a graduate of the School of Transborder Studies. So we're very proud of her. Okay,
Yes,
next.
we are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're done. So let
Those
us
were
know what
our
you think.
highlights. Obviously, there's
Yes.
a lot more to talk about in this that we're working on in this book. If you have any ideas or suggestions,
Yes.
I think that would be wonderful. But that's just I think it's kind of fun. I have to say, selfishly, putting this together. It gets me excited about this project. As you can imagine, we're very busy right now. So this was actually, I'm grateful that we got to do this presentation because it got me back looking at this project again. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. So thank you so much. We already have at least one question in the queue. And for everyone else that's interested, please don't forget, you can use the Q&A button to ask questions of our panelists today. So I will ask the question that's in the Q&A box right now. It is by Kai McKinney, and he asks, is there additional burdens placed on these women to do the emotional labor of being the only person, the only woman, the token woman of color or Latina in some particular political spaces? Does this stall, so I guess two questions, and does this stall affect the longevity of their work in elected politics?
From what some of the interviews that I have done recently, like with Representative Lorena Austin and others, what zaps their ability to continue doing this work is the financial cost.
Mhm.
That is what they're saying is really difficult because, you earn $24,000 a year. You have to have another source of employment. A lot of people don't want to hire you because you're an elected official. Other people, like, why should we give you time off to go work during the legislative session when, we need you here at work? So they said that was a real damper. And sometimes the emotional support was the criticism. I mean, a lot of women said that it was very hard to take criticism on social media when it's anonymous, when people call you racist, sexist terms. They said that was also very difficult. But one of the things that really came through in the interviews is that when people approach them about, I have a problem with this agency, or I have a problem with my immigration status, or I have a problem with my son's school, they really do it in such a caring and loving way that they really embrace and really support people. I'm sure that must take a toll, but the reasons why people say, I don't want to do this anymore is more financial, and then the criticism, and also exposing your family. One of the things that, for example, Charlene Fernandez has older children, and her kids, all of them worked on the campaign. Her son was the campaign finance manager. Her daughter did social media, and the other son did her policy briefs. So she put everyone to work. The people that have younger children, they say that that's also a sacrifice, and that the kids also, when they hear criticism of them on TV, or their friends criticize their decisions, that's also painful, that's also emotional work. Regina has children in middle school and high school, and that the kids would say, oh, well, your mom is mayor, did something stupid, or we don't like what she did. And then the kids would, my God, Mom, people don't like you. And that was hard for the children, and it was hard for her to tell her children that that's part of the work, but it's not easy for sure. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. We have another question from Marta Chavez, and she had a question about, were there any other individuals, you mentioned one, that had their personal legal status, in other words, being perhaps initially undocumented, or DACA, or et cetera, help influence their decisions in their work in politics, or their parents' statuses, right? In other words, the immigrant experience help influence their decision to be involved in politics.
I would say the mayor of Tucson, Regina Romero. She attributes that seeing how her parents were treated, the injustices they suffered, how they were exploited, how they were scammed because they didn't speak English, because they were immigrants. I think that inspired her. And she, she has been a real advocate for immigrants in the community. Reina, I mean, I know Reina, I mean, part of it is that we know like Reina and some of these people, we know them quite well. I mean, she is right now very stressed, as you can imagine, because she is a DACA recipient right now, and she's worried about, will my DACA application be renewed? Will there be a problem? She has, had conversations about, what if I have to leave the country? What will I do? Where will I go? Because all of her family is here, and her family has now been able to legalize. She aged out, and so she's in a different status than her siblings, and so that has definitely inspired her to do this work. But she's in a tough situation for sure.
Thank you.
I would add, again, going back to that quality of they have to become involved. So some of them, they know their status is, it's scary right now, but they don't care because they are so passionate about some of these issues. So, it's scary right now, but these immigrant activists, they have just gone forward regardless of their status.
That's amazing. Yeah, difficult times. There's an anonymous comment and question asking that you mentioned fundraising as a barrier early in the presentation. Has the fallout from Citizens United been a barrier for these women moving to a larger political stage?
So there's two things that people told me in the interviews that were barriers. And one was their party. They said, to get help from the Democratic Party to run your campaign is hard. The Democratic Party does not support, does not give us money. It's like whatever it is they do for us, it's a real, you have to really work hard to get whatever it is, that the party is not as forthcoming as they felt that the party should be. And then they said, when you start to raise money, your network is not a network that has resources to give you. Like, like the women and the fathers and the mothers you meet at the PTA and your son's daughter's school, how much money can they contribute to your campaign? And so they felt that it was hard for them to access resources to fund their campaigns. Some of them thanked, like Emily's List and some of the women campaigns, but they had to get national recognition to be able to get that kind of support. And they said that was also hard. So a lot of them have run campaigns, really grassroots, really hardworking. And they're saying, sometimes good people, just because they can't raise the money and get the visibility, they just don't rise, because it's the people that do. And I think right now, with all of this outside influence of money, we're getting candidates that money can buy and not who are really going to represent our community. One of the things, and this is one of the recommendations we're going to put in the book, I really believe that fundraising should be limited to your district, to your state only. Why should someone from Oklahoma or Arkansas or Illinois care about who the state senator is going to be in Arizona? And I think that there should be limits. There should be only local money should help fund your campaign, period, and not allow for these outside influences, because that is changing our whole political dynamic in this country. And I think it's a major reform that we need to really think about. And I think, this election has taught us a lot about the role of fundraising. But no one mentioned specifically that the Supreme Court decision on that. They just said it was hard to raise money.
But you're right? It is really interesting, and I think it's a discussion that has having more traction, and hopefully it continues having more traction, especially for local and state elections, which limits on funding. And as in other countries, as it happens in other countries, perhaps once you're the candidate, then there has to be a particular support from the party that you're running from, right? In other words, guaranteed monetary financial support for the candidate if they're running. So I'm glad to see that at least those conversations are being put forth and are in the table to try to change that. I find it very inspiring in this, particularly in this time, that to hear the stories of these women, though, that is pretty amazing. We need to hear about these women leaders. So what can I ask, perhaps, and this is my own question, what are some of so the collections of these stories will be in the book. What other ideas do you have to make it into the book? Are there, for example, Dr. Coronado, you just mentioned you're putting it in the book that hopefully, some of the barriers are financial. Are there other kind of lessons that you're kind of learning that are going to make it into the book about how to facilitate some of these amazing leaders to actually not only continue, but hopefully encourage new women leaders, new Latinas, to be involved in politics?
Yeah, I think another recommendation, in addition to the finance one, the campaign finance one, is definitely the role of ethnic studies. That was very palpable. I took a Mexican American studies class, and that changed my life. I saw myself in this historical context. I see the activist, and Regina, the lady from Coconino County, Lorena Austin, a lot of them, that's what changed their life. So the importance of ethnic studies, especially now that DEI is being under attack, I think that's something that we need to also recommend. And then I think another thing that is critical, which is a lot of people were like, some of the people we've shared this with are surprised. Their husbands, in many ways, are their primary supporters. And it's like, and many of them will tell you, without my husband, I couldn't do this. Without my husband, this wouldn't have worked. Without my husband taking care of the kids, I could not have done this. I couldn't have done that. And so I think that is another thing that we need to give credit for, that many of their husbands were instrumental in their success. And that's something that, the stereotype doesn't we need to change that stereotype, because their husbands really rose to the occasion in some instances, and they truly credit them for their support.
Yeah, I would add, so I went through the topics, and I'm really proud that each chapter has its own literature review. So that I think is really important, because as you can imagine, there's not a whole lot on this. And so one thing, we are finding this idea of intersectionality. So it's, mentorship as the first. What does that mean? What's a leader? So that, I think, is going to contribute to the theory and the literature and the research. Another interesting find is a lot of mentors were white men. And that's not surprising, because a lot of these first-time leaders are first-time. And so that, I don't think that's counterintuitive, but that is a really important finding, I think, that and that white men have the experience, and they're not the first, but are able to provide a lot of important perspective. And that, I found that was really interesting and important.
Yeah, no, and I'm thinking about, besides the husbands, also I'm sure the kids, as you both mentioned, right? I mean, you need the family support to be able to go into this. And Dr. Magaña, it makes perfect sense that some of the mentors were white men. It was politics regretfully, is just a majoritarily white man kind of game still, right? Hopefully, these women will start changing that, and we will see that not happen
Well,
any longer.
I think of myself, I was in, as a PhD in political science, I was the first, always, I'm sure you're the same, very male, always, Latino, but it was my white male mentors that were really supportive. And I mean, I look at some of this literature, somebody telling me to get the PhD and to be the first, and my encouragement of family. And a lot of this, I can see for first time folks in these positions, first generation, right? First time leader, first generation scholar, right? So a lot of the same, I think, principles, I think will be helpful, I hope, for other sort of topics.
Yeah. Ana Laura Aslan has a question. They mentioned, I wonder if,
I know Ana Laura.
So she asks, I wonder if any of the Latinas you interviewed mentioned if they had emotional, psychological support as they experienced difficulties. Does being a woman and minority hinders their willingness to seek out emotional, psychological support in times of need?
We didn't ask that, and
that
didn't
I was
surface.
Say, I'm not answering that.
Yeah, that didn't surface. That didn't surface.
We didn't touch that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know Ana Laura. You were she was my student at UTEP, right? Is that Ana Laura Aslan? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a small world.
Yes.
I have another question here. Do you all feel that women are constantly being pinned against each other, or is there a supportive environment in politics? I know that politics are competitive, but as a Latina woman in harder space, are they supportive and helpful towards each other?
Yes.
That came through. Yeah. That came through. Yeah. One of the questions was, what other leaders do you admire? And some people would be the other representatives, the other senators, the other women on the city council, the other women that I serve with. It was a very supportive, a very encouraging, a mentoring kind of situation, and very much like we're in this together. That was something that, yes, very collegial, very respectful relationships. I found that very refreshingly and very surprising. Yeah, and that does come through.
Yeah, that's consistent with the literature too. Women are better able to do coalition building, better able to make decisions, compromise. Shocking.
Yeah.
But no, it was just consistent. I mean, it was in the interviews and it's in the literature consistently.
Yeah.
That is great to hear, and that does make sense. Yes.
Yeah.
I have another anonymous question. There's a lot of questions here. Can you share examples of how Latina leaders in Arizona have formed cross-cultural coalitions to amplify their political impact?
Well, I think Charlene reaching out to the tribes. I think Sally Ann Gonzalez, who's a member of the Yaqua Basque tribe, working with the Mexican American community. I know that we also interviewed at one point the first African American mayor of Flagstaff, Carol Evans, and she had a lot of support both from the Mexican American community and from the tribal nations. So yeah, there are a lot of good examples.
Yeah, and there's a pan umbrella organization called One Arizona that works with various grassroots organizations. So immigrant activism, environmental issues, raising the minimum wage, have absolutely worked as a coalition around particular issues.
I was actually very happy to hear how at least a couple of your examples that you brought us here of Latina political leaders embrace both their indigenous and their Latino roots. That was I was incredibly happy and to hear that, because sometimes especially in the American Mexican immigrant, right? So in the American political landscape, it can be very reductionist, right? It's like, oh, you're this or you're that, but most of our backgrounds are very complex, and we're lots of different things. So it was
That,
was great to
yeah,
hear that.
I'm happy you like that, because I got to remind my colleague that that's why we have the title Transborder Trailblazers. So it does that, I mean, intersection, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's why we do have these other women that are define themselves as other than just Latina.
Yeah, and that's amazing, right? So they can be a woman, they can be political leaders, they can be Latina, they can be indigenous, they can be mothers, they can be they
Yeah.
are all of it. So I'm
We
glad that
are
they're
women.
yeah, I'm glad that they're seeing themselves in that and
Yes.
realizing that. It's difficult to fight the cultural hegemonic discourse, right? So it's
Yes.
amazing that to see those. So
Well, David, there is a lot of that we had to really look for the intersectionality research. And we have this amazing, now she's not here, maybe she is, but we have this amazing person that's helping us that did some of the background research for us, who's amazing. And yeah, Nora, and she's been fantastic. But yeah, intersectionality.
yeah. So I have one more anonymous question here. This is a more general one. I don't know if you can answer it, but perhaps some of your interviewees gave some of this advice. What advice would you offer to young Latina women aspiring to become leaders in Arizona's political landscape?
Volunteer. Volunteer and work someone's campaign and learn from that experience. A lot of them said, you know, I helped so-and-so run for city council. I helped so-and-so run for state senate. I learned the ropes. I'm glad I volunteered. Then I realized, okay, do I have the wherewithal to be able to do this? And a lot of them said that that volunteer experience really helped them solidify their experience, to say, oh, this is what I need to do, lessons learned, what to do, what not to do. And that volunteering was instrumental in helping them prepare for their own campaigns.
And if I may add to that, I think this book has helped me really redefine what a leader is. And so as a young students, you are leaders. You are the first. You are remarkable. You're doing something that maybe the first to go to college, the first in your community. And I would say one of the first things you can do, and we just had a thing about this last night, is that you can be a leader by being informed and share information, because you have the extraordinary position of perhaps being at a university, learning. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think you have the, not responsibility, but you can be a leader right now by being informed and sharing information with those that don't have right now, that can't get this information. So I would say you are absolutely leaders, and right now it's critical, critical to have accurate information and to get that information out. That is leadership at its very best.
Thank you. We are at the end of our time, but I want to thank you both, Dr. Magaña, Dr. Coronado, for a great presentation. Personally, a very inspirational presentation, so I can't wait to buy the book. We need it in these times. So we need to hear from Latina leaders. We need to hear from people that not only have fought the really hard fight, but are there still fighting the really hard fight, and are leaders. And so this is amazing and very inspirational. So thank you both for doing this work. It's needed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dominic.
No, thank you to Martha, to Dominic, and to you, David, and to the audience for being there today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for being here and listening. And don't forget, buy the book once it comes out. It's important. Not only you'll be also supporting two important academic leaders in that are women, so and are Latina. So there you go. So just continuing that. Again, thank you so much for your talk today. To all of you that are here in the audience, gracias thank you for being here. Gracias por estar aquí. We will resume in next month our second speaker series in CLAPS. So again, the social media for CLAPS is on the chat. So if you're interested in following us and learning who we have presenting next, please do so. Dr. Cornalo, Dr. Magaña, thank you again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was great.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And if
No.
you